You ever think you're the only one making any sense? Or tried to reason with your partner with disastrous results? Do long rambling answers drive you crazy? Or does your colleague's abrasive manner really get your back up? Well, these are all questions which posed at the very beginning of Thomas Erikson's 2014 book on communication. Now, I've personally never had that thought that gives the book the title, but that doesn't mean that others haven't. Ultimately, communication is key, and we often get it wrong. Well, more accurately, we just don't really quite get it right. Supporting this, in a recent survey, 86% of respondents blame company failures on poor communication. It might be easy to blame management for these failures, but in the same way, not all failures can be blamed on the manager in football. It's really the player's fault. So why am I saying this? Well, it's because communication underpins all that we do. Being able to communicate effectively and efficiently as a leader is crucial to bringing people on your journey. In pursuit of your vision, you need followers, and followers are created through great communication. Now, as a lifelong learning-all, when a friend was waxing lyrical about a new book which just made sense, I was really intrigued. Whilst I'm not a psychologist, anything but, I'm aware of the concepts of communication and how they relate to personal relationships. So when my friend said it was the best book she had read on communication in a very, very long time, I raised an eyebrow and thought I'd best read it. So with that, by the end of this video, you will know my 5 takeaways from the book Surrounded by Idiots and whether it is worth reading. If you want to skip straight to the end, find out the answer, then check out the chapter markers in the description below. But for those interested in hearing about the book, let's just dive straight in. Surrounded by Idiots was written in 2014 by Thomas Erikson, a Swedish expert on communication who for over 20 years has helped people understand themselves and their surroundings. At the time of writing the book, he had worked with more than 5,000 executives to be better and more efficient leaders. Now, at the beginning of the book, Erikson explained that he started with the leadership training program for executives around Sweden, but has morphed into working with bosses, employers, and anyone in between to better understand the communication styles. Today, Thomas speaks to and for anyone who wants to learn more about themselves and others. I'll put a link in the description below to the book and his website, so please do check it out. Now, the whole ethos of the book is to explain how to spot the different personalities in the people you interact with and how best to communicate with those individuals in a way that gets through to them best. Sounds like an obvious thing to do, but I'm willing to bet that the majority of us don't actually bother considering how the other person needs to hear the message for the one that we are giving. Rather, we just focus on giving the message and hope that they get it. The book is based on what they call the DISC system, D-I-S-C, which stands for dominance, inspiration or influence, stability or steadiness, and compliance. It's these 4 personality traits, originally posited by psychologist William Moulton Marsden in his 1928 book, Emotions of Normal People, that forms the basis of this conversation. Now, rather than following the original categories to understand the personality styles, Erikson uses something a bit more close to home. He uses colours, specifically red, yellow, green and blue. Now, it would be remiss of me not to give you a warning at this stage. By carrying on watching this video, you will be far more informed than the majority of people you interact with regarding communication, but you will also start assessing everyone you come in contact with as a result. Now, I think this is a good thing, but you may differ. But don't say I didn't warn you. With that, here are the 5 things I learned from Surrounded by Idiots. Number 1, understanding what makes people tick. Okay, to be fair, this isn't a brilliant discovery, but Erikson gives specific examples of what you can do quickly to get a better understanding of those personalities around you. In a particularly frank assessment, his simplest advice is just shut your mouth and start listening. We do have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Bearing this in mind, there are 4 different colours to determine a person's personality style. A yellow person will be easy to spot because they never stop talking. At the other end of the spectrum, a blue person will remain quiet. Conversely, reds use their words economically and will be quick to point and stay on the topic. At times, they may even boss you around. Now, with greens, who are the most common personality, they will be friendly and laid back. But Erikson doesn't just talk through the different behaviours exhibited, he covers how to spot personalities based on other behaviours as well. So for example, the folks who take the time to read all of the instructions and supporting documentation, well, they're blue people. Think anyone who has assembled a piece of flat pack IKEA furniture, for example. Whereas the person who takes charge of a group is usually a red. Yellows are predominantly optimists who are concerned about good vibes. and like the new and shiny things in life, while greens tend to cautiously avoid rocking the boat. Now I know these are generalisations, but in order to categorise everyone into 4 categories, it was going to happen. Number 2 is one's flaw is another's asset. Simply put, the basis of the book's title, in Erikson's own words, he observed a red who ran a company that was full of idiots, hence the title of the book. The reason this red person considered them idiots is that they didn't work hard and as quickly as he did. Yet without them, the company wouldn't succeed. This singular view of the world is dangerous for many reasons. But let's divert around that for a second, because each of the different personality types has its pros and cons. For example, while you wouldn't want a red's abrasiveness anywhere near a sensitive situation, they are indispensable when you need help with a seemingly insurmountable problem, since they love a good challenge and are relentlessly hard workers. Each of the styles has its place, and trying to align the right person in the right place is the real art here. More often than not, we, collectively, get it wrong. Now, number 3 is meeting people where they are. It's natural to assume that others will receive and interpret information the same way that you do. Think about it for a moment. If a certain method is effective for you, you'd think it would be effective for everyone else. But that, of course, sadly is not true. The example used is treat others as you want to be treated. Now, this was a phrase I was told a lot growing up, and I still adhere to today. But the book challenged my thinking on this. You see, a blue will read through the entire user manual before playing with their new gadget, whereas a red will plug it in right away and learn as they fiddle around with it. Kind of makes sense. Erikson uses the book to help you figure out how best to deliver feedback and other information once you understand an individual's personality. For example, reds will want specific examples, blues will want all the details, facts and figures, yellows need concrete examples, and you may need to repeat yourself since they have a short memory. And with greens, you need to be gentle. Now, the key takeaway here is that if you try and use a red style on a green person, it is a recipe for disaster. Yet that is often what happens day in, day out, certainly in the workplace, and, to be honest, in everyday life. So why are we surprised when communication is not as clear as we would like, bearing this in mind? Huh? Now, number 4 is most are a mix. After looking at the characteristics of the different colours that make up the styles for Surrounded by Idiots, I assumed I would be one colour. But this was a premature misjudgment. It is highly likely we will have elements of 2 or more colours, which is to be expected. If you don't fancy doing the formal assessment, you can do the free disc test to understand your colour. I'll put a link in the description below so you can do it. Now, from doing some more reading, I understand that this is pretty common. So according to Erikson, only 5% of people are solidly one colour, 80% of us are 2 colours, and 15% are 3, with virtually no one exhibiting an even split among all of the colours. Erikson says it's rare for challenging combinations, such as blue-yellow and red-green, to get along, especially when those traits are within one person. But simply learning about these personality types has helped his clients and others get a better understanding of themselves and those around them, especially the quiet, self-critical ones. In other words, being able to be more aware of how others need to communicate with is a good thing. And this is all about opening our eyes and getting used to knowing what works. Now, number 5 is the best is a collection. Logic would imply that we tend to get along with people who are the same colour as us. So when Erikson was splitting people up into groups to work on a task at a workshop, he figured he'd put the same colours together. Seemed sensible. But the result? It was a disaster. The reds did the wrong task, the yellows just talked, the greens were indecisive, and the blues were, well, still analysing the instructions when the time was up. It was the perfect storm of everything that was wrong. I can identify this when recruiting for my teams. I don't need more people like me, as would all be strategic and visionary. I need people who fill in my weak spots or complement my skill sets. It's important to acknowledge this and know how best to approach team dynamics, especially if you are building a team. With these 5 takeaways, what do I think of the book? Well, what I liked. I think it's fair to say that after reading this book, I gained a better understanding of certain personality types that I previously didn't quite have a full grasp of before. I got an awareness of personality styles from Myers-Briggs and my personal favourite, the Harrison assessment, but this added a new dimension of understanding. I also think it gave me a better understanding of myself. I'm aware of my strengths and my shortcomings, but this book definitely highlighted certain things that I can take into account for greater self-awareness. The fact that the book gives plenty of examples is good. It is very good at bringing the words off the page, so certain people in my life certainly popped into my head when I was reading it. I mean, this was quite amusing at times, and I found myself smiling to myself as I pictured who Erikson was talking about. But what I didn't like, initially I thought the entire concept was too simplistic. I mean, how could you categorize the entire population into 4 colors? However, from continuing to read the book, it became clearer as to what the framework was trying to achieve. Now, the misconception is that the book is trying to summarize everyone. Instead, it aims to take an overall view of how each extreme personality color may react in certain situations. This kind of made sense to me. As mentioned before, I have experience with the Harrison assessments, which is excellent. By the way, it takes, I think it's like 174 different data points and then works out what your behaviors and traits are. This was far more in-depth and more scientific, but what you're trying to do here is to understand how people work and interact with each other. That's why Erikson talks about people having a combo of colours. It's not always easy or evident to determine who is what colour for this very reason. I did wonder if a reader could fall foul of colour weakness. By that I mean feeling bad about the list of shortcomings you might exhibit. Imagine for a second that you are a green. You think you'll never make a leadership position, which sends you into like a spiral of doubt or something. This, ironically, would be typical green behaviour, as they are cautious and risk adverse. So, in conclusion, what do I think? Well, overall it's a good book, but it will not be everyone's cup of tea. It was an enjoyable read, and I would bet a pound you will learn something new from it. It is as entertaining and as easy to read as many, and something you can use to improve your relationships, especially in a working environment where everyone handles situations differently. But is it life-changing? Short answer, no. Can we apply it to everyday life to help better understand our colleagues and friends? Yes, absolutely. Especially if you are new to the world of personality styles. It is for that reason I would recommend giving it a go. I'm sure you will envisage friends and family members on numerous occasions when reading this book, just like I did, but to be honest, that is to be expected. To be honest, there are far too many layers to the human psyche for us to be able to categorize it into 4 colors, read behavior types, but Erikson's attempt is a fairly valid and good one. If I did have one complaint though, it would be that it was at times repetitive. I do think the book could have been summarized in a shorter manner, perhaps just within 100 pages. And if you're wondering what colors I am, then here is the result. I am equally split between red and yellow. The quote from the disc test says, "I have a strong inner motivation to influence people and circumstances, and I thrive in competitive situations and challenging assignments. The stresses and pressures of everyday work and life are unlikely to reduce my effectiveness and enthusiasms." Sounds like me. Happy days. These are the 5 takeaways from Being Surrounded by Idiots, the book by Thomas Erikson, and what I think about the book, whether you should give it a go into improving your communication with friends, family, colleagues, and anybody else that you come in contact with. So I would love you to share your experiences with your communication styles. Please do let me know in the comments below which colour you think you are and how you think you interact with others. But do you want to know what true leadership is? Then check out this video here and I'll tell you all about the 6 reasons of what I think is the most important skill to have as a leader. But with that, have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.